Welcome everybody to our little podcast today. The first, hopefully, of several podcasts, chats with Maddie and I. So Maddie, shall I kind of introduce us and talk about how we met, or do you want to?
Yeah, that's fine.
So Maddie and I, we met online when an online writing course popped into our lives with Authors and Co. And Maddie and I were both looking to work under Heidi. Now, how do you pronounce Heidi's surname?
Heidi Maver.
Who wrote the My Child's Not Broken. And she is a well-known author, and we worked as an affiliate. She was working as an affiliate, and we were under her guidance, weren't we? And it was a smaller group. So the cohort was about 100 people, and we were in her smaller cohort of about 10. And so we connected, didn't we? Because we were both writing about healing from complex grief, by suicide, lost by suicide. And so we connected in that way, didn't we? And the book writing process started in October 23, and you then published in October last year, didn't you? Or September, yeah.
Before.
And so we chatted, didn't we, online, and occasionally had video calls as well, all the way through, didn't we? And I mean, for me, you served as a really important connection during that healing time, because we were going through the same experience of connecting to us, all parts of our story. And it was very raw and vulnerable at times, and we could support each other, I think, through that, couldn't we?
Definitely.
And so my book, I'm still editing my book. I've written it and now editing it. When I was editing it with my daughter, and now I'm editing it on my own again. But you've actually published. So do you want to discuss a little bit about your experience?
Yeah. So, it was quite a daunting moment pressing the publish button on Amazon. But yeah, it's been great. It's sort of led me to start making some other connections with other people that potentially have had a loss by suicide, that haven't found connections with people or felt comfortable to be able to talk about sort of the difficulties and the silence and isolation around the grief of suicide loss. So yeah, I think absolutely for me, it was a huge part of being able to connect to my experience and process it, to have somebody else that, well, the first person ever really that I felt really comfortable and connected to, because it was almost like we didn't really need to say much to each other. We just understood.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is, I think what we've both experienced is there's so much silence around emotions, grief by suicide in particular, because of the sort of the stigma and the taboo, the nature of it, the difficult nature of talking about it. It's really scary, isn't it? It's scary for us to talk about it, and it seems to be very scary for other people, scary and very uncomfortable. So it's been quite difficult to get engagement, hasn't it, with our story in real life, and even, online as well. But I think we are slowly getting there, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely.
So we can come on today. Do you want to just mention the title of your book again? I mean, we have got it written on the post, but
we're giving a voice to the child left behind, and that's navigating the unspoken grief of parental suicide in childhood. And I think sort of the best way to describe that is sort of a blend between actually giving my inner child that voice and what I've held in for all those years,
yeah,
and also being able to look at ways to kind of heal some of that grief from my adult perspective now.
Yeah. And my book is called I See You, a mother story of whole family healing after loss by suicide. So your story is specifically from the child's voice, isn't it? And my story is more about how, as a mum, trying to support my children through their grief and really be able to sit with their emotions. um, I had to learn how to better sit with my own emotions, and I had to address all the barriers that impeded that. And it was looking at my whole life, and also the impact of trauma before I was even born, like intergenerational trauma. So it's like looking at all of that, what makes it so difficult for us to sit with our emotions, um, and to try and make that easier so that we can then better sit with our children's emotions. And your story sort of gives strong evidence to that, doesn't it? That actually it is so difficult. As you, as a child, nobody really could connect with your emotions growing up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, that's sort of like the biggest part of wanting to share that story was that the isolation and not having somebody to talk about it to, I think, led to them emotions and everything just being suppressed inside for all of those years.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's probably good to start to mention really what is, trauma. Trauma is it's what happens inside of us after we've experienced traumatic events. And I think that's a bit of a misconception, isn't it? People think the trauma is the actual traumatic event. And it's not only the traumatic event, it's actually what happens inside our nervous system when we are left alone with our emotions without any kind of connection, to be able to release and ease the emotions. And that that adds a layer of trauma. And trauma healing is anything that connects us to our emotions so we can release and ease them. And for both of us, we have chosen writing, haven't we, as that to facilitate our connection to our emotions. And so that's what we're really on today to talk about, isn't it? Really, is why specifically writing, rather than therapy. I mean, therapy, and there are other healing treatments I use, but specifically, I would say writing is the most powerful one for me. So it was really to share that. And so, what would you say? How would you answer that, Maddie? That why is writing specifically so you know facilitates your healing?
I think the best way to kind of describe that is I've always all of these thoughts, emotions, memories, experiences, just everything that's kind of whirled around my head for a long time. And I think because sort of back 30 years ago, didn't have therapy or counselling,
Mm,
um, there's never been a way to process that. They've just always been sort of, as I write about, sort of as a baggage that I've carried with nowhere for it to go. And I guess never really knowing where to start.
mm,
So when I came across the book writing course, and I started to think about, what I wanted to write about or how I was going to do that. I think within that first week, I wrote 27,000 words. And it was just this opportunity that all of the things that have been in my head with nowhere to go went on paper.
yeah,
Um, and it allowed me the space, the time, the autonomy to pick all that apart
yeah,
in a way that was I could process little parts of it. Whereas I think it'd been such a jumbled mess just in my head. And I think if I'd have sat down and tried to verbally express that, I just wouldn't have known where to start with it all.
Yeah.
So getting the words out on paper was a great way to start being able to almost divide it up and to get it into smaller pieces and then address each of them sort of smaller parts at a time. And I just found that really, really beneficial to understand more of what was going on in my mind and what that experience felt like as a child, and also sort of, I guess, making sense of it.
Absolutely. And did you find that when you were writing that old emotions were springing up to the surface and you were able to release a lot of stuff that had kind of been shoved down?
I think it was really interesting, and how I kind of look at it now is it was a very emotional time, because I've said to people it was almost like giving that microphone to 11-year-old me,
Yeah.
13-year-old me. You know, as I went on through the years, it was finally like her time to,
Yeah.
to get out. And I think them feelings and emotions had been suppressed in there, that it was so easy for me to actually to be able to then write about it. And the amazing thing with writing from the child's perspective was, as an adult, I was then able to look at it through an adult lens. And it almost then allowed me to validate them feelings that I had as a child, but it was validating it as an adult.
So it
And
was your adult self that was like comforting your inner child and soothing her and comforting her, giving her that company that she never had.
yeah, definitely. And I think that was sort of, I've said to a couple of other people, I guess that was the biggest thing as a child growing up with this. It was that validation and that connection, and somebody that could just listen. Uh,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like a basic human need, isn't it, to feel seen? Not just the happy parts, but the deeply painful, hurting parts as well. And the way we live our lives, modern life doesn't really allow a lot of space for that, does it? That a lot of those negative emotions, those emotions that perceived as negative, are kind of like hidden a bit, aren't they? In our culture, there's not a lot of space for them. Um, I mean, going back to what you were saying about, I mean, I describe it, and in fact, I described it in my post last Tuesday. How for me it was like this massive, big, dark, tangled mass in my mind before I started writing. And it was like that I needed to kind of unravel that dark, massive, like knotted wool almost in my head, needed to unravel it. And it was the sentences, the chapters, writing the words on the page. That's what helped to unravel the whole story. And for me it was like you going back to that inner child, and what was it that was stopping me from really being able to connect to my emotions and show my emotions to other people, and kind of unraveling that and being able to make sense of that. And it's just something that you can't do in one sitting. So it was like those chapters, um those paragraphs, even each paragraph, each chapter helped to clarify and make sense of it all, and along the way release emotions that had been like hidden.
yeah. And I think that me and you sort of have spoken quite a lot about like the visualization of things, like really helped. And I don't think
Yeah.
I was able to do that in thought. So when I started writing it, similar to what you've just said there, the way I visualized it was sort of like, inside my mind was like an app where I had these boxes, and all
Yeah.
the boxes just had memories written on the side, but they were in no particular order. It was just sort of a mess. And
Yeah.
being able to unpack each of them boxes with writing,
Yeah.
break it down further, sort of give that opportunity to almost like clearing an attic out. It was sort of, say, releasing those emotions. And I think once I'd started writing, I don't feel like I need to hold on to them anymore.
Yeah. So it's really helped you to release
Yeah,
the emotions. I mean, it's not that we are forgetting, is it? I mean,
no,
we're not forgetting. The scars are still there, but because I had EMDR trauma treatment, and the way she described it was that with the treatment, the scar is left, but the infection around it is eased, and so you don't forget. You still have that memory. It's just that the emotions around it that compound and complicate um, the trauma are released. So you get a lot of peace from that, don't you?
yeah. And I think with writing, that's where it gave me a place to do that. And
Yeah,
I'd never really thought about that before, but it was almost like, I think because I've carried it through childhood and well into adulthood, it's almost like I was scared of letting any of them memories go or them thoughts go.
yeah,
Kind of held on to it all, but writing is a brilliant way to get in one place. And I don't almost feel like I have to hold on much to all them things now because it's all there
in a
written,
book.
and it's,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, that's what I'm looking forward to, is getting it edited and polished and then closing that and putting it on a shelf. And yes, it's my book, it's my story, but so I can better leave it behind. So it doesn't jeopardize and hijack my current life and my future life. And I think that's something worth sort of emphasizing, is that with healing, we're trying to make the most of life and find joy in life. So it's not like we are indulging ourselves with the misery of what's happened. We're actually wanting to better process it so it's not hijacking our current lives, so we can find more joy. And of course, we'll never forget. The scars will remain, and you don't ever overcome grief. You learn to live alongside it, don't you? And but alongside it, you're better able to find the joy in life. And it
yeah,
is such a precious life we have, isn't it? And it's so short, really. When you lose, I've lost the three closest people to me: my husband and my parents, who died relatively young in their early 70s. You realize, every day you're with them, and that is so familiar, and that's your normal life, and suddenly they're gone. And it gives you that shock that actually life is so short. It's so short. And so I feel very grateful for the chance to have written my book under the guidance of Authors and Co, and to have had your company along the way, because I think it's really massively facilitated my healing. So I feel in a much better place than I was before I started the
definitely.
writing course. And I think the other thing to mention is that, when we can't talk, when there's not therapy available, um, there's also a lack of space, isn't there, where we can actually be heard, because people are living their own lives with their own struggles. And it is scary talking about emotions and grief and suicide. And so there are very limited opportunities, even if we can talk, to actually be properly heard. Whereas I think where you write it in a book, the reader can dip in and out, can't they, when they can. And so it's almost like you're giving a gift. If somebody resonates with your story at all, you're almost giving a gift to them, aren't you? That they can read it even when they can. They can digest it even when they can.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that gives the opportunity for, that's what I wanted to do with the book when I was writing. It gives that opportunity to share that lived experience and what you've learned through that lived experience and
Yeah.
what potentially could have helped. And I think ultimately, like what you've just said there, if somebody can read it and resonate to what you're saying, it just helps somebody to feel less alone in what they're going
Absolutely.
through.
Yeah, because it is such a lonely path, isn't it? Because it's very difficult to talk about it, and then if we can talk about it, it's very difficult to share those raw emotions. I mean, I didn't even cry at the funerals. I just could not connect to my emotions, and I can talk about it. I can talk about my story, but actually, you'd very, very rarely see me cry. I think it's only my children that have seen me cry. And so you're very much in your own story without a lot of company. And so it is a very lonely place at times, isn't it? And I think if you can, yeah, if other people can read it and it resonate, you do it, hopefully it will feel less lonely for other people traveling this
Yeah,
path as well.
yeah, and I think it sort of gives that opportunity to go, oh, it's not just me that's felt them things, or it's not just me that's felt that awkwardness around the topic of suicide, or it's not just me that's had that huge anxiety about having to offer this information to other people through life. And I think one of the things that I found definitely through healing and connecting and sort of finding peace within myself around it is I no longer have them feelings about talking about suicide. You know, before I very much found it difficult because I didn't understand it or I
Right.
with it. So talking to somebody else about it was really hard. Whereas now I feel like I've made this peace with it, and that's
Yeah.
sort of almost a way where I'm like, you know, I'm here. I can listen. I can talk about this and not feel them emotions of anxiety mainly, you know, at
Yeah.
somebody else's reaction, because you have to learn how to
Mm,
cope with how somebody else might react to this, or you know, the longer term when you're talking about that, especially when you're younger, is that awkwardness. People don't know what to say to you, or people
yeah.
cope with this, and actually that just then shuts down any
Yeah.
conversation. Whereas I think, you know, for both of us, when we've talked about it, just being able to validate somebody and be like, you know, that is really difficult what you're going through, and you know, even being able to, you know, just hold that space for somebody, I
Mm,
think would have allowed me to process and heal from that experience a lot more quickly. Whereas writing has massively helped me be able to do that on a personal level without kind of
yeah.
necessarily the need to feel like, oh, I need somebody else to listen to me or I need somebody else to understand it. I think what it really come down to in writing was I need to hear this. I need to
Yes.
understand this. I need
Yeah.
to make sense of it. So yeah, I think
And then you can share in a more regulated, less anxious way, can't you? And yeah, I mean, I've written and I've learned a lot, and the learning about the nervous system and how the nervous system is impacted by trauma, and how that heightens our risk of suicide as well. And understanding all that has given me more understanding about my late husband's suicide and my dad's suicide. You know, my dad died 3 weeks before my mum because she was nearing end of life with cancer, and he wasn't coping. But when you start to analyze and understand suicide, it makes us more able to feel comfortable talking about it and explaining it, because there's so much taboo around it, isn't there? There's so much stigma and taboo. There's like the blame, the shame, the guilt, all of those emotions that cause anxiety really shut us down being able to talk about it, don't they? And others talking about it, and it's scary to go there. And I hope that, you know, our podcast, hopefully we will have future discussions, and certainly your book, hopefully my book when I publish, and my posts on here. I hope to publish a post once a month on the second Tuesday of the month, which kind of talks about a specific part of complex grief recovery and healing. And also, you know, we have the chat on here, we have messaging on here. Hopefully we can create a safer space, a more comfortable space for people to talk about uncomfortable stuff, because that's what we need to do, don't we? We need to get comfortable talking about the uncomfortable stuff.
yeah, and I think it's just that opportunity to, like you say, to connect to others that like I said with you, like you were the first person really ever that I didn't have to say much to, but I just through reading your writing as well, which again is
Yeah,
a great talking about writing and how that's a healing tool. You know, being able to read somebody else's helps you to make sense of your own. And we didn't really have to verbalize much to each other,
that's
whereas we were
right.
sending sort of paragraphs or chapters to each other, and it was sort of like, oh yeah, I understand that, and yeah, I know what you mean by that. And it's
Yeah,
maybe in the beginning of it, it takes um less emotional energy, you know,
yeah.
to be able to write it, know that you've written it and somebody else can read your words and understand that,
Yeah.
trying to verbalize it.
It's finding your people, isn't it? I think that's the beauty of writing. It's you feel you're finding your people who can understand it and do get it. And for me, writing and having a few key people like you read it and a few other very close friends read it was like, this is the first time I've ever felt truly seen. Stuff happened in my childhood that I hadn't told anybody about apart from John. And it was like, this to feel finally seen by a few key people was just so powerful.
Yeah.
And for you, who's actually published, and you went, I mean, we were encouraged, weren't we, with the process of writing under the guidance of Authors and Co. We were encouraged to choose beta readers, and then they were fed back, and then we were able to sort of fine tune and edit our books after that feedback. Did you find that part of the process of writing helpful with the beta
Yeah,
readers?
I think it really sort of helped with the I mean, I can remember the first sort of, I think 6 or 7 people I sent it out to, and even pressing that button that I'd shared it was very overwhelming in itself, because it was like, oh my goodness, I'm giving this whole story that I've never told to people. Um, but to have the feedback that you were having was really important as somebody, an outsider reading your work, to be able to say, could you just clarify that a little bit more, or
Mm,
maybe could you explain that a little bit more clearly? That was because it's your story, isn't it? You've lived it. It's
yeah.
kind of your normal. So it really helped. And I think, yeah, for the first time ever, I sort of like, oh, there's a small handful of people in the world that really understand me now, that really know
Mm,
me.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was scary, but like you say, I think I had to take that step of into the unknown to start talking about it, for it to become, for people to be able to to really understand me. And I feel like a different person now, because I feel like there's a lot of things that people, even people that have known me for years and years and years, didn't know. And
Yeah.
now I feel a bit more free to be me. Maybe things just make a bit more sense.
I mean, that resonates with me. It's like I feel I've been masking a bit because I have hidden quite a big part of my life from others, and people know me as who I am. Whereas actually, the process of writing has been quite transformative, and I am able to better show the other bits that have been hidden, for a while. And I think, yeah, that emotional connection, actually all those emotions, even the fear of sharing, the fear of sharing, the fear of going on today is real and powerful, isn't it? But I think what we've learned with the writing process, the healing process, is actually the power of connecting to those emotions and doing it anyway. The power of saying to myself, I am really scared going online and talking about this. I am, it's scary. I'm scared about sharing stuff, but I'm going to do it anyway because I know how beneficial it feels to do it, to feel more seen and to connect to people who get it. And I mean, that helps me massively. And if it touches somebody else, then that's a wonderful bonus. But if it just helps me and my children, it's almost, to me, I've kind of said to myself, that's enough. If it just helps me and my children, then that is enough. When I only get like one like or a couple of likes on a post or whatever, because it is a difficult thing to read about. And we're new to writing, aren't we, and publishing our posts. And I mean, I haven't published my book yet, but we're new to this. So
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. And I think it's sort of like if somebody had said to me, I don't know, even 6 months before coming across the book writing course, that I would ever be able to process and heal and peace. With this, I would have gone like, I'm never going. This is never going to happen. This isn't possible. There's too much to it. It was too traumatic. I held it in for 30 odd years. I can't. And then all of a sudden, like you say, from making them small connections and taking them little steps each time that you felt nervous about sharing things, has brought me to a place that I never thought that I would be. And I think the importance of being able to talk about the power of that writing, sharing that, is giving that hope to other people that there are ways. And especially, like I always say to people now, I've never particularly been a writer or someone to write things down, but now I'm always like, yeah, like, write it down, see how you feel reading it
Yeah.
yourself.
I mean, I have always used writing. I mean, I've never identified as a writer, um, but I have always used writing as a way to make sense of things that happened to me growing up, my difficult relationships sometimes with, John and my mum. Sometimes, it's those difficult relationships at times with your closest people. I did use writing to try and make sense of things, and I've got a whole box, a collection of all my journals. And I think for me, because I do find it very difficult to connect to my emotions immediately, because of what happened to me as a child. And I won't go into that now, but I do write about it, and I will, I have got posts about it. But for me, writing is, it's a more convoluted and long-winded way of connecting to my emotions, but I do get there eventually. And it is important to get there eventually, isn't it? To have some way to connect to your emotions, to release them, to ease them. And for me, writing, it just feels safer. I don't feel safe showing my emotions. I wish I did. I feel it's almost like a disability. I can't cry. And I feel, if you can cry, embrace it. Embrace crying, because every tear you shed, you're releasing cortisol, stress hormones, and it helps you to heal. And so I think I do cry when I write, because eventually I connect to my emotions and release and ease them.
But I think a really useful part of writing is I have a brain that tends to be everywhere all the time.
Right.
And I think with writing, you have that freedom to come away from it for a little while. There were certain chapters that I wrote, and I'd feel like, wow, it was a lot. Like, I got it all out, got that initial, I need to write about this. Like, got it out. But sometimes I'd go away for like a week or a month, and then come back to it, and then start re-looking at it with almost like a different view on it, or not so emotionally connected and distressed because I've just written about it. I'd had time to think about it and then come back, and it's right there where you left off.
Yeah.
I think necessarily sometimes verbally or in conversation you can always like literally pick up where you left off, but with writing, that gave that ability to just go back to where I was in that part of.
Yeah, because when I mean, emotions are energy, aren't they? So when our emotions bubble up, that's what gives us the anxiety, that sort of stimuli. I mean, I learned about the polyvagal theory and the nervous system, and I've learned that the emotions bubble up. They're the things that cause the anxiety. And so, when we're writing and all this stuff, all these emotions are coming up, we do need time to release them, don't we? And we need time to recharge and ground ourselves again, and gives ourselves a breather and get back to a regulated state again, where we can take a breath and then, revisit it. So we're able to pace our healing, aren't we? Much better at our own pace, in a
Yeah, I think,
self-directed
you
way.
have that freedom when you write, don't you, to
Yeah,
know when you're ready to go back. So it's
yeah,
not like necessarily like, oh, every Tuesday evening we
yeah,
sit and do. It's just literally, I mean, I remember sometimes in the middle of the night, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd just wait
yeah,
to be there, and I'd be like, right, the house is quiet, everything's silent, I'm just going to go and do this. And I'd sit
yeah,
for an
yeah.
hour
I
and just get it.
same.
There
Yeah,
was no waiting for, an appointment, say we're talking therapy, or even
yeah,
picking up the phone and talking to someone. I never dream of ringing someone at 3 o'clock in the morning
no,
and being like, hey, I need to talk about this.
yeah.
Writing, of course, you're just able to do that. And yeah, that
It,
really,
it,
really
yeah, it felt like it feels like a constant companion, doesn't it? Because and in fact, what I do is every 6 weeks now, to better pace myself, I do take a week off sharing my writing, because I share on Substack, I share on our private Facebook group, I share on Instagram, and I am sharing to try and, spread the word about everything we're talking about today. But sometimes you just need a break from sharing. But I still feel the benefit of writing. So I actually have my own personal private Facebook group where I put photos on things that I've noticed in the week, thoughts that come up. I find writing, even on that week off, I don't stop writing, because writing is my company.
yeah,
It's where you can properly feel seen, isn't it? Even if it's just yourself,
yeah,
seeing yourself. It's so important. It's bringing the subconscious into your conscious, isn't it? Because I mean, I've read somewhere that 95% of how we act in life is from our subconscious. And so we don't even realize that maybe past trauma is impacting the way we're relating to other people. And so once you start to write and heal and bring all of this stuff to your consciousness, you can then live a much more authentic and meaningful and present life, where you're relating to people in a way where you are aware,
yeah,
more aware of what you're saying, how you're behaving.
definitely.
Because when 95% of it's really hidden in your subconscious, you're not really totally aware, are you, of what you're really saying?
Yeah.
So, anyway, we've been chatting now for nearly 40 minutes. So, shall we wrap it up there, Maddie?
Yeah,
I did make a few notes, just key points, and I think we have mentioned all of those. Let me just double check on this sheet. Um, keeping it keeps me the writing keeps me accountable to my well-being, grief recovery, healing. And so it I mean, that was a good part of the course, and continues to be a good part of the course, because they do offer a Facebook group where we can go in. For those of us still writing who haven't published yet, we can go on, and there's implementation sessions, and it just keeps us accountable to publishing our books. And just all the writing I do, I feel, keeps me accountable to my healing, and therefore my family's healing.
definitely.
And I think because of that, because you are focused on your healing, you're therefore in your own little world reducing your own family's risk of suicide. Because it's awful to say this, but families who have suffered suicide are more at risk of suicide themselves. And that is a horrible statistic, but it is a real statistic. So we do have to be a bit more hypervigilant, don't we, with ourselves, our children. And so I feel that whatever healing modality you do use, and writing for me is such a valuable one, it does keep you accountable to that healing. So yeah, I shall we wrap up now, Maddie? And feedback in the comments if you're watching live, or if you watch the recorded version. Please feedback if there's anything that you specifically want Maddie and I to talk about, and hopefully this is the beginning of, you know, a future of chatting more online and creating a safe space to chat.
Yeah.
All right then, lots of love everybody.
Bye.
Bye Maddie, bye.